Now we're going to solve problems involving test of hypothesis on population proportion. So number one, every year the assigned teachers determine the body mass index or the BMI of students in a certain junior high school. A study finds that 10% of grade 7 students observed are underweight. A sample of 780 grade 7 students were randomly chosen, and it was found out that 125 of them are underweight. Is this claim different from their grade level age? Use 0.05 level of significance. So now we're going to solve problems involving test of hypothesis on population proportion. As previously, we've done it with mean, the given is mean, but now we're going to be solving with given population proportion. So population proportion is usually in the form of percentage of ratio. For example, in this one, it's 10%. So according to the study, it's 10% is the grade 7 is 10% of the grade 7 students are underweight. But with a study with a sample of 780 grade 7, this is only for grade 7, but for this grade 7, so 780, 125 of them are underweight. Is this claim different from the 10%? So that's the question that we're going to answer. So the first thing we're going to do for this step 1 is we're going to state the null and the alternative hypothesis. So the null hypothesis is P is equal to 10%. So it means that there's no difference between the 10% and this one with the sample with the new study. So this would be meaning it's P is equal to 10% or P is equal to 0.10, which means that the percentage of underweight grade 7 students is 10%. So that's the null hypothesis. For the alternative hypothesis, which is HA, so the question is just asking for the difference. So is this claim different? So ibig sabihin, it's not asking for if it is less than or greater than. So the alternative hypothesis would be P is not equal to 0.10 or 10%, which means that the percentage of underweight grade 7 students is different from 10%. It's different from 10% or it's not 10%. So that's for the alternative hypothesis. If we're going to reject this would be our conclusion. But if we found out that this is not this is acceptable, so we're going to have the null hypothesis as our conclusion. So for second step is we're going to state the level of significance. So in our study, it's given, or in our problem, it's given that the level of significance is 0.05. So 0.05. And it's because it's P is not equal to 0.10, it means that it's two directional. Two-directional, ibig sabihin, it's two-tailed. If it is less than, it's left-tailed. If it is greater than, it's right-tailed. Again, if it is less than, it's left-tailed. But if it's greater than, it's right-tailed. We need this in our step 4. For this step 3, we're going to compute the test at statistics. So the first thing we're going to do is compute for the sample proportion. So we are given that this is the population proportion, it's 10%, but we're going to solve for the sample proportion. So our P here, which is the population proportion, P is equal to 0.10. So that's easy because it's given. We're going to solve this for the sample proportion or the P hat. The P hat is equal to X over N. X is the number of successes in the sample. So in here, 125 of the 780 is underweight. So 125 out of 780. N is 780 because it's the number of samples. So 125 divided by 780, that's 0.16. So 0.16 is the p hat. 0.16. Next, we're going to solve for the z computed. So this is the z computed. So the formula for this one is p hat minus p over square root of p, quantity 1 minus p over n. So this is the formula. So ang gagawin mo lang is substitute mo lang yan. So p hat is 0.16 minus p, which is 0.10, over square root of p, which is 0.10 times 1 minus 0.10 over n. You could type this immediately to the calculator. So pwede mong is 0.16 minus 0.10 equals to, divided by square root of 0.10 times 1 minus 0.10 over n, which is 780 over 780. So the answer would be 5.58. So 5.59. So this is our z computed. So we solved it already. So z computed. So this is the test statistic. Next, for the step 4, we're going to determine the critical value. The critical value, based on our step 2, it's 0.5. The level of significance is 0.05. So in here, and then it's two-tailed. So level of significance is 0.05, two-tailed. So it's z critical is equal to positive negative 1.96. So that's for the step 4. For the step 5, we're going to state the decision and then we're going to draw the conclusion. So for step 5, all you have to do is the absolute value of the z computed should be greater than the absolute value of the z critical. That's for even if it is left or right tailed, this is applicable. So our z computed, so go because it's critical value, so gawin natin siyang positive. So it's already positive, so you don't need to change anything. So it should be greater than the absolute value of this one, which is absolute value, ibig sabihin gawin mo lang siyang positive. So it should be greater than 1.96. So if it is true, we're going to reject the null hypothesis. Ibig sabihin, our conclusion would be the alternative hypothesis. So if it is false, so kapag false to siya, if it is true, our conclusion would be the alternative hypothesis. If it is false, our conclusion would be the null hypothesis. But because this is true, kasi 5.59 is greater than 1.96, therefore our conclusion is there is enough evidence. So you start with the phrase, there is enough evidence that because this is true, so therefore our alternative hypothesis is our conclusion that the percentage of underweight grade 7 students is different from 10%. Ibig sabihin, the percentage of underweight grade 7 students is not 10% already. So that's for our first example. Our second example would be this one. So our second example for number 2, the problem is, in a public senior high school, a survey conducted last year by a health officer showed that 12% of the students drink alcohol. This year, a new survey was conducted randomly on 500 students from the same school. It was found out that 97 of them drank alcohol. Test of the claim was higher at 0.01 level of significance. So step 1 is we're going to state the null hypothesis. So you could have it in symbol, the null hypothesis, P is equal to the population proportion is 0.12, and based on our question, test if the claim was higher. So if it is higher, it should be greater than 0.12. So it should be greater than 0.12. So step 2, we're going to state the level of significance. The level of significance is 0.01, and it is greater than, ibig sabihin, it's right-tailed. So step 3, we're going to solve now for the statistic. So first is the p hat, which is x over n. X is equal to, based on the problem, how many in the sample. So ang sample is 500, and out of the 500, ang naninigarilyo is ang umiinom na alcohol is 97. So 97 out of 500. So we're going to solve for that. 97 divided by 500 is 0.194. So 0.194. So solve for z. Z is, the formula is p hat minus p over square root of p times 1 minus p over n. This is for z computed. So p hat is 0.194 minus p, which is 0.12, over 0.12 minus 1 minus 0.12 p 1 minus p over n, which is 500. So type that in the calculator. 0.194 minus 0.12 divided by square root of 0.12 times 1 minus 0.12 over 500. The answer is 5.09. So that's for our z computed. This is z computed. Step 4. Our step 4 is we're going to determine the critical value. So to determine, our level of significance is 0.01. So 0.01, and it's right-tailed. 0.01 right-tailed, 2.33. So 2.33. So level of significance 0.01. So z critical is 2.33. Step 5. Z computed should be greater than, the absolute value should be greater than the z critical. So z computed is 5.09, should be greater than 2.33. Positive, true or false? It's true. Because it's true, therefore our hypothesis is HA. Therefore, it's the percentage of high school students who drink alcohol is greater than or higher than 12%. So that's for our conclusion. So we'll proceed with example number 3. Example number 3 state that a sample of 100 students is randomly selected from a school and 18 of them said they are left-handed. Test the hypothesis that less than 20% of students are left-handed by using the alpha 0.05. So step 1, we're going to have the HO and the HA, the alternative and the null hypothesis. So test the hypothesis that less than 20% of the students. So P is equal to 20, and the alternative is P is less than 20. or 0.20. So P is less than 0.20. That's for the alternative hypothesis. Step 2, alpha is 0.05, and because it's less than, so left-tailed. Step 3, so P hat is equal to x over n, and x in the problem is how many of the 100 students are left-handed? 18. So 18 out of 100. So 18 out of 100, 0.18. So 0.18. So z computed is equal to p bar minus p hat minus p square root of p times 1 minus p over n, which is equal to 0.18 minus 0.20 over 0.20 times 1 minus 0.20 over 100. So if you going to notice, kapag left-handed, it should be, the answer should be left-tailed rather, the answer should be negative. So 0.18 minus 0.20 divided by square root of 0.20 times 1 minus 0.20 over 100. So the answer is negative 0.5. So negative 0.5 is the z computed. So step 4 is 0.05 left. 0.05 and then it's left. So negative 1.645. So z critical is negative 1.645. So step 5, the z computed absolute value should be greater than the z critical. Absolute value of the z critical. So z computed is negative 0.5. So the absolute value is negative 0.5. The absolute value of negative 1.645. Or in short, ang positive siya, gawin mo positive, should be greater than the positive of this one. So is it true or false? So it's false. Therefore, because it's false, the conclusion is HO. Therefore, the percentage, or there is no enough evidence that we're going to prove that it's less than. So it could be that yan ang conclusion. There is no evidence, enough evidence that would prove that the average of students who are left-handed is less than 0.20, or the percentage of left-handed students is 20%. So that's the conclusion. That's how you're going to solve 4 problems involving test of hypothesis on population proportion.